She wasn't seated in the executive suite or tucked behind closed curtains. Instead, she had chosen seat 1C, right at the front of first class. In full view of every passenger who boarded. She was making a point her assistant Tasha had offered to book her private, but Vanessa had smiled and said, "If I hide now, what did we fight for?" As passengers filed in, some recognized her, others didn't, but many glanced twice, noticing the elegant black woman with the graceful posture and unshakable calm. The plane filled. A buzz of excitement floated through the cabin. This route was a milestone not just for the airline, but for Vanessa personally. It was her late father's dream destination. He had always said, "I want to see Africa before I die." He never got to. So she built a flight in his honor. An unexpected guest just before takeoff. A flight attendant leaned in. "Ms. King, there's a young man asking to say hello. He's in seat 17A, economy." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Named Jamal Turner." She smiled. "Send him up." Moments later, Jamal stepped into the front of the plane, little taller, a little more confident than the last time he flew. He had traded his hoodie for a fitted jacket and slacks. In his hand was a small envelope. "Hi, Ms. King," he said, almost shyly. "Sorry to bother you." "You're not," she said, rising to greet him. I found out it was your foundation that got me on that first flight. Sky Tomorrow. I didn't know until they sent me the confirmation email for this trip. You earned that seat, Jamal. I just made sure the door was open." He smiled, then handed her the envelope. "I wrote you something. Nothing big, just what I couldn't say out loud." She took it, nodded, and tucked it into her purse. "I also wanted to tell you something else," Jamal added, voice soft. "I start flight school this fall. Full scholarship. I want to be a pilot." Vanessa blinked, then broke into a wide smile. "You will be," she said. "And one day, I'll fly with you in the cockpit." They shook hands. Jamal returned to his seat, beaming. Vanessa sat back down, staring out the window for a long moment. High above the clouds as Flight 001 soared above the Atlantic. Vanessa opened Jamal's envelope. Inside was a folded sheet of notebook paper and a short letter written in messy, sincere handwriting. "Dear Ms. King, I used to think the sky belonged to other people, people who didn't look like me, talk like me, come from where I come from. Then I saw you. Now I know the sky belongs to anyone who dares to rise. Thank you for giving me wings. I didn't even know I had." Jamal. Vanessa pressed the letter to her chest. Her throat tightened. This was it. This was why it all mattered. Back on the ground, a changing culture at JFK, Melinda Carter stood at gate A12, calmly boarding passengers for a late-night flight to Dallas. She had just finished her 6th mentorship call with new hires, a responsibility she had volunteered for. She had become known, quietly, as someone who could be trusted to speak about real change, not just policies, but people. She no longer feared being watched, because now, she was proud of who she'd become. As the final passengers boarded, one elderly black woman approached the gate, slightly flustered, waving a boarding pass. "Baby, I'm sorry, I think I'm at the wrong gate. They said I was upgraded, but I'm not sure." Melinda gently took the pass, scanned it, and smiled. "No, ma'am, you're exactly where you should be. You're in first class." The woman blinked. "Really?" "Yes," Melinda said warmly. "And if anyone says otherwise, you send them to me." They both laughed. The award ceremony 2 weeks later. Vanessa stood backstage at the National Passenger Advocacy Awards, held in Washington, D.C. It was her first public appearance since the incident, and she hadn't planned to attend. But when she learned the nomination came from passengers, she couldn't say no. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage to a standing ovation. She didn't smile for the cameras. She smiled for every person who had been told to sit down, shut up, or step aside. She accepted the crystal plaque and spoke only one sentence. "The skies are finally changing, and it's because we refuse to stay grounded." The real That night, Vanessa sat alone in her hotel suite, barefoot, holding a glass of tea. The award sat untouched on the table. Her phone buzzed. A message from Marisol. "You've got to see this." Attached photo. Vanessa opened the image. It showed 2 young girls, one South Asian, one black, grinning ear to ear as they stood in a cockpit. Behind them, a female pilot with braids was kneeling, helping them with headsets. The caption on the photo read, "Future pilots of Aurelia Air, inspired by the woman who owns the sky." Vanessa stared at the image for a long time. Then she finally let the tears fall. Final scene, Gate A22, revisited, months later. Vanessa returned to JFK one last time, not for business, not for press, but simply to reflect. She stood quietly in front of Gate A22, hands in her coat pockets. The sign hadn't changed. The gate looked the same, but the people running it, the way passengers were treated, that had transformed, and part of her smiled knowing. The gate, that once tried to reduce her, had become the symbol of everything she had reclaimed. Melinda spotted her from inside and waved up Vanessa. Waved back. No words, no fanfare, just respect. Real, earned, mutual. She turned, picked up her bag, and walked away, not because she was leaving something behind, but because she had already built something ahead. The end. A national recognition 2 weeks later. At the National Diversity in Aviation Conference in Atlanta, Vanessa took the stage to deliver the keynote speech. The event was streamed live, reaching thousands of airline professionals worldwide. Midway through her speech she said, "Bias doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, it hides in protocol, in tone, in who we believe, and who we dismiss. But leadership, real leadership, listens to the whisper and chooses differently." Her final words brought the crowd to its feet. Empathy is not a slogan, it's a policy, one we must all enforce. The unexpected nomination one quiet morning. Marisol rushed into Vanessa's office holding a paper. "You're not going to believe this," she said breathlessly. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "What now?" "You've been nominated for the National Passenger Advocacy Award, first executive ever nominated by passengers." Vanessa blinked. "By who?" "Turns out, someone started a petition. It went viral. Thousands signed it. The board had no choice." Vanessa exhaled slowly. "I didn't do it for recognition." "I know." Marisol smiled. "But maybe that's why you're getting it." Melinda's quiet legacy back at JFK, Gate A22, had become something of a symbol. Staff referred to it unofficially as Vanessa's Gate, but something else had happened there too, something quieter. Melinda, now fully reinstated in her original role, handled boarding with a new kind of grace. She spoke gently. She double-checked with care. She smiled. One day, an elderly black couple approached the counter nervously. The man held a faded envelope with a printed itinerary inside. Melinda greeted them warmly, scanned their IDs, and said, "Welcome aboard, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas. You're both seated in first class today." The man blinked. "We are." Melinda smiled. "Of course you are." The woman whispered, "Thank you, baby. We were afraid someone might say it was a mistake." Melinda looked him in the eye. "Not on my watch." They boarded, and Melinda looked up at the gate sign above her, Gate A22, and smiled to herself. The sun filtered through soft clouds as Flight 287 began boarding at JFK Airport. It was a routine afternoon, the kind where no one expected anything unusual. Just another takeoff, another destination. At Gate A22, Melinda Carter stood behind the counter, her name tag gleaming under the terminal lights. Her posture was different, now confident, calm, and gracious. Her presence no longer demanded control. It offered comfort. As passengers began to line up, a young man stepped forward slowly, holding a wrinkled ticket and a nervous expression. "Hi," he said, his voice soft. I think there's a problem with my seat." Melinda glanced at the ticket. It was for business class seat, for C. She looked up at him. He couldn't have been more than 20. His hoodie was too big, and his shoes had been glued in places, where the soles had started to peel. There was a scar near his right eyebrow, and his eyes held a quiet sadness. She smiled. "What's the issue?" He hesitated. I've never flown before. Someone bought me this ticket, but I didn't think it was real. I almost didn't come." Melinda's heart slowed. She had seen this kind of fear before, not the fear of flying, but the fear of being told, "You don't belong here." "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Jamal. Jamal Turner." She typed his name in and nodded. "You're all set, Jamal. Your ticket's real, and you're exactly where you're supposed to be." Jamal stared at her like he didn't believe her. "Seriously?" he whispered. "You're not going to check twice or call someone?" "Nope," she said, smiling. "I trust you." His shoulders slumped with relief. "Thank you. I mean that. I've been waiting for someone to say that all my life." Melinda blinked back unexpected emotion. "Have a good flight, Mr. Turner." As he walked toward the jet bridge, Melinda inhaled slowly. That interaction would have been different 6 months ago. Very different. She might have questioned him, doubted his story, even humiliated him, but she wasn't that person anymore. She was something else now. Across the country, Vanessa in Oakland while Flight 287 ascended into the clouds. Vanessa King was across the country, standing in a small classroom in Oakland, California. The walls were decorated with inspirational quotes and faded posters about leadership. But today, all eyes were on her, the woman who had become an unlikely symbol of resilience and change in aviation. She was speaking at a community mentorship program for underrepresented youth, something she'd quietly supported for years. You can build anything, she told them. Even if no one believes you, even if the world tells you to sit down, you stand up. Because one day, they won't ask who you are, they'll already know. A 16-year-old girl named Zariah raised her hand. Miss Vanessa, she asked, did it hurt when they didn't believe you were the owner? Vanessa paused. Yes, she said simply. But what hurt more was knowing how many other people had experienced the same and walked away thinking they were the problem. She looked around the room. That's why I didn't walk away, quietly, because if I had, it would have kept happening. The phone call that changed everything that evening. Vanessa returned to her hotel. Just as she was about to order dinner, her phone buzzed. BOT private number. She almost ignored it, but answered. Hello? A familiar voice spoke, cautious, deep. Vanessa, it's Reggie Simmons. Her heart skipped. She hadn't heard that name in years. Reggie had been one of her first flight school classmates, a black pilot with the kind of presence that made instructors nervous. While Vanessa went into airline operations, Reggie had stayed in the cockpit. He'd made headlines once, not for heroism, but for getting wrongly removed from a cockpit after a co-pilot assumed he was a flight intruder during a swap. He'd walked away from the airline world after that. Reggie, Vanessa said, how are you? I saw the headlines. He said, saw what you did. I've been watching from the sidelines. A pause. I think I want back in. Vanessa blinked. You do? Not for me, he said. For every young, black kid out there who needs to see one of us in the captain's seat. I'm ready to fly again, if you'll have me. Vanessa smiled, her voice thick with emotion. I'll do more than that. I'll build the runway. Jamal's journey. Meanwhile, on Flight 287, Jamal Turner sat in seat 4C, staring out the window as the clouds drifted by like soft memories. A flight attendant brought him a warm towel and asked if he wanted sparkling water or juice. He was too stunned to speak at first. No one had ever treated him like this. Not at school, not at work, not even in his neighborhood. He reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a letter, crumpled but cherished. It was from a non-profit foundation called Ski Tomorrow, created to support underserved youth with travel, internships, and mentorship opportunities. Vanessa had started it quietly, without press. Just after her father passed, a man who had once driven city buses in Atlanta and told her every day, one day, baby girl, you'll fly higher than all of Sky Tomorrow, had picked Jamal for a mentorship trip to Los Angeles. It included flights, lodging, and meetings with black entrepreneurs. This was his first flight, and now he was flying in business class. He didn't know yet who Vanessa King was, but he would. A new kind of leadership back at Aurelia's corporate office. Marisol entered Vanessa's office with a grin. We got approval, she said. For what? The rebrand. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. Which one? Marisol handed her a printed mock-up, a new section on the company's website titled, The Vanessa Standard, Service Rooted in Respect. Below it, the mission statement read, every passenger, every employee, every human being deserves dignity without condition. We will lead the skies by example, not just by where we fly, but how we treat those who fly with us. Vanessa stared at it. She didn't love the attention, but she knew this was bigger than her name. It's not about me, she said. I know, Marisol replied, but someone had to say it first. And you did. A surprise in the mail that weekend. Vanessa received a package in the mail. No return address, but postmarked from New York. Inside was a small wooden box. She opened it slowly. Inside was a pair of golden wings, pilot insignia, polished, gleaming. There was a note attached, asterisk, for the woman who gave us our wings, from the passengers you never met, but who felt seen because of you. Asterisk. Tears welled in her eyes. She didn't cry easily, but this meant everything. The message that broke the silence. In Monday morning, a simple post appeared on Aurelia Air's internal company page, visible to all staff, from the CEO to baggage handlers. It was a message from Melinda Carter, asterisk, to every person I worked beside, to every passenger I ever made feel invisible. I was wrong. I thought I was protecting the airline, but I forgot the airline is made of people. I've changed and I'm still changing. If I could go back to gate A22, I would. But since I can't, I'll keep moving forward, one flight at a time. Thank you, Ms. King, for not ending my story that day. You let it begin instead. Melinda, asterisk staff, shared it hundreds of times. Some added stories of their own. Others posted notes of forgiveness. The woman once known for her coldness had become a surprising voice of growth and healing. And Vanessa, she didn't post a comment. She just smiled quietly and closed her laptop. 3 months had passed since the day Vanessa King's first-class ticket was ripped at gate A22. 3 months since a single moment exposed a quiet truth hiding in plain sight. 3 months since one woman's dignity had been tested, and her response had lit a fire across an entire industry. Now, Vanessa sat inside Flight 001, the inaugural journey of Aurelia Air's new flagship route, New York to Johannesburg. The tweet came from Robert King, an A-list actor with over 10 million followers. Overnight, the hashtag #GateA2 trended globally. People began sharing their own stories, times when they were ignored, disrespected, or profiled while traveling. But now, those stories came with strength, with a spark, because Vanessa had done something very few people in power had the courage to do. She used her silence not for peace, but for impact. Melinda's turning point far from the headlines. Melinda sat in her one-bedroom apartment in Queens, watching herself in a loop. The video. The moment she snatched the ticket. The moment she said, "You people." The moment her victim turned out to be her boss. She hadn't slept. She'd avoided her friends. The Aurelia HR team had enrolled her in the first of several training sessions, Zoom calls with guest speakers, interactive role-playing, and real passengers sharing painful experiences. But it was the third session that finally cracked. A recorded interview with Elliot Monroe, a retired black veteran who described being escorted off a plane after a flight attendant assumed he was trying to sneak into business class. "She didn't believe I was military," he said. "Didn't believe I could afford it. I sat in a police room for 4 hours with no apology." Melinda shut her laptop and buried her face in her hands. For the first time in years, she didn't just feel caught, she felt ashamed. A letter from the past back at headquarters. Vanessa opened an envelope, marked personal, forwarded to her. Attention from an old Aurelia office in Chicago. Inside was a note written in neat, cursive.ms. "King, asterisk, you may not remember me, but I remember you. I was on your second ever flight out of Atlanta. I was nervous, my first time flying. You noticed my shaking hands and brought me tea yourself, though you were already a VP back then. I never forgot that, not just because you were kind, but because I'd never seen someone who looked like me at the top. You changed how I saw myself that day. Sincerely, Renee Jacobs asterisk, now a flight instructor and proud mother of 2. Vanessa closed her eyes. This was what made it worth it. Back to JFK. Month later, Vanessa returned to New York, this time, not in silence. She was scheduled to speak at an IWIDE event hosted in a conference space overlooking the airfield. Hundreds of staff attended, gate agents, flight crews, office employees, custodians, dispatchers. Some were curious, others were nervous. She stood at the podium. No PowerPoint, no charts, just her. 4 weeks ago, she began. I was told I didn't belong on my own flight. My ticket was torn. My dignity was tested. She looked around the room, and I realized it wasn't just about me. It was about all of you. The ones who get ignored. The ones who carry this airline with pride. And the ones who suffer quietly under bias. She paused. From this moment forward, Aurelia Air will stand for more than efficiency. We will stand for equity. We will lead, not just with speed, but with heart. Because no passenger, no employee, no human being deserves to be told they are invisible. The room erupted in applause, not just polite claps, but a rising wave of emotion. Some people stood, a few wiped tears. Even Melinda, standing in the back, lowered her head, clapping softly, eyes wet. At the gate, again later, that day, Vanessa stood once again at gate A22. This time, she was not flying, she just wanted to see it. Passengers bustled by, A child tugged at his mother's hand. A young couple argued over snacks. The world moved on. A new gate agent stood at the counter, a young black woman named Annika. Fresh out of training, Vanessa watched as Annika smiled warmly at each passenger, taking time, checking IDs properly, showing care. When their eyes met, Annika froze slightly. "Ms. King." Vanessa smiled. "You're doing a great job." Annika's face lit up with pride. Vanessa turned to leave, but not before she glanced one last time at the sign above the gate. Gate. A 22. The place where one woman was almost broken, and instead, rebuilt something greater. It had been nearly 6 weeks since the Gate A22 incident, and while the media buzz had slowly quieted down, inside Aurelia Air, the effects were still rippling like shockwaves. The Flight Path to Respect initiative, launched by Vanessa herself, had expanded beyond training videos. It now included mandatory equity certification for all frontline employees, anonymous story-sharing platforms, and a rotating advisory board of both staff and passengers. The company was changing visibly, but one thing still lingered. Quietly, unresolved, Melinda Carter. Vanessa hadn't seen or spoken to her since that day in the executive lounge. She had given HR instructions to supervise Melinda's reassignment closely, and to report any signs of resistance or regression. But what came back surprised everyone. Melinda was changing. She didn't complain. She showed up early for her new role in customer conflict resolution. Not glamorous, often thankless, but critical. She sat through every training session with full attention. She asked questions. She volunteered for role plays. And most surprisingly, she listened. It was Marisol, Vanessa's VP, who brought it up during their weekly update. "She's taken it seriously," Marisol said, not quite believing it herself. Some of the staff even said she helped de-escalate a race-related issue at LAX last week. She stopped another gate agent from profiling a Hispanic family with non-English boarding passes. Vanessa looked up from her tablet. She stopped it, stepped in herself, told the agent to double-check before making assumptions. Helped the family board smoothly. No drama. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, expression unreadable. "She sent you a letter," Marisol added. "Didn't go through PR. Said she wanted you to read it privately. I have it, if you want." Vanessa hesitated, then extended her hand. Melinda's letter. The envelope was plain, handwritten. No logo, no branding. Vanessa opened it slowly and began to read. "Dear Ms. King, I have no excuse for what I did at Gate A22. Not that day, and not before. But I'm writing this now because the person who stood behind that counter isn't the person I want to be anymore. I've spent the last 6 weeks confronting things I didn't want to admit about my bias, about how easily I let judgment override empathy, and about the way I used my uniform to feel powerful rather than serve. Watching myself in that video made me sick, not just because I was caught, but because I saw how quickly I dismissed someone with dignity. I didn't see a customer, I didn't see a leader, I didn't even see a human being. I saw someone I thought didn't belong. And now, I see how often I've done that in smaller, quieter ways. I'm sorry, not just to you, but to every passenger I ignored, talked down to, or treated like a problem. The truth is, I needed to be humbled. I needed to be taught. And you did both. Thank you for not firing me. Thank you for showing me the difference between power and leadership. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know I'm trying, really trying to be someone better. Sincerely, Melinda Carter. Vanessa folded the letter slowly and set it on her desk. She didn't speak for a while. Finally, she whispered, "Scheduled me for JFK next Friday." Friday, JFK Airport. Staff training room. The air conditioning buzzed faintly in the staff training room. Rows of folding chairs faced a projector screen. But today, there were no presentations. Just one guest, Vanessa King, seated quietly at the front. Roughly 30 Aurelia employees were gathered. Gate staff, flight attendants, baggage handlers, and in the back row, trying not to fidget, was Melinda. Vanessa stood and addressed the room. "I'm not here as your executive today," she began. "I'm here as a passenger, one of many, who deserves to be seen for who they are, not who someone assumes they are." She let that sink in. "This isn't about shame, it's about clarity and repair." Vanessa's gaze swept the room. "But today, I also want to acknowledge something else. Growth." She turned toward Melinda. "Melinda Carter," she said, clearly and evenly. "Would you come forward?" Melinda froze. A few heads turned her way. Her heart pounded. Slowly, she stood. Vanessa met her at the front. 6 weeks ago, I gave you a choice, accountability or unemployment. You chose the harder path, and you walked it. Melinda's throat tightened. I didn't do it to impress you. I know, Vanessa replied. That's why it impressed me. There was a pause. Vanessa extended her hand. Melinda looked at it for a moment, then took it. I forgive you, Vanessa said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Melinda's eyes flooded. The room was still. Then slowly, applause started, soft, then rising, not forced, not theatrical, just real. Behind the curtain after the training, Vanessa sat in the break room alone, sipping water. She didn't expect anyone to follow her in, but footsteps approached. It was Melinda. May I? Vanessa nodded. They sat in silence for a moment. I kept thinking, Melinda said, voice low, about that moment. When you said, you only respect people when you know who they are. That line hit me harder than anything else. Vanessa nodded gently, and the truth is, I don't think I respected myself enough to act better. I'd become so bitter, so automatic. I thought being firm meant being cold, but I see now that it was just fear. What were you afraid of? Vanessa asked softly. Melinda exhaled. Being insignificant, being powerless. So I made myself feel important by controlling the gate, making people wait, rejecting them, because I didn't think I mattered in the bigger picture, and now I'm trying to matter for better reasons. Vanessa smiled faintly. Then keep going, one passenger at a time. Melinda nodded. Thank you, she said again. I'm going to give you a chance to speak. I'd like to understand what happened. From you. Melinda's lips trembled slightly. I thought you were trying to scam the flight. People do it all the time. Fake printouts, stolen tickets. Stop, Vanessa said, her tone sharper now. That's not what you thought. What you saw was a black woman in first-class clothing, and you assumed she didn't belong. Melinda swallowed. I didn't mean it like that. You didn't mean to say you people, or you didn't mean to say it out loud. The silence was piercing. Melinda shifted in her seat. I've had a lot of people lie to me before. Passengers yelling, pushing their way into upgrades. You have to be firm. Firm is checking IDs. Firm is calling a supervisor. Firm is following protocol. What you did was humiliate someone in public because you believed your assumptions were more valid than their dignity. I didn't know who you were. And that's the problem, Vanessa said again, repeating it slowly. Melinda looked down. Vanessa leaned in slightly. Tell me something. If I were blonde, wearing a cardigan, and holding that same ticket, would you have ripped it up? Melinda didn't answer. Vanessa's voice softened, but it was no less powerful. Let me tell you what you tore up today, Melinda. Not just a boarding pass. You tore up 25 years of a woman's struggle. You tore up memories of rooms where I was the only black voice at the table. You tore up the pride of a daughter of immigrants who built something so others wouldn't be made to feel small. And you did it because, in that moment, you believed I couldn't possibly own anything worth respect. Melinda looked crushed, her hands twisted in her lap. I was wrong. Yes, you were. There was another long pause. Do you want to keep your job? Vanessa asked. Melinda looked up quickly. Yes, please. I'll do anything. Vanessa nodded. Then you'll enroll in full equity and anti-bias training. Not once ongoing. You'll write a letter of apology, not just to me, but to the passengers who witnessed what happened. And for 3 months, you'll be reassigned to assist the very passengers you used to dismiss in economy, customer care, and conflict resolution. Melinda's eyes welled up. Okay. One more thing, Vanessa added. If you ever repeat anything close to what happened at that gate again, to anyone, your name will be off this company's records within the hour. Melinda nodded. Vanessa stood up, dismissed. Melinda quietly stood and left the room. The door clicked shut behind her. The boardroom called that evening. As Vanessa arrived at her hotel in San Francisco, her phone buzzed again. It was a video call from the executive board. Marisol, tech co-founder Evan Lee, and head of legal Devika Sharma were on screen. We reviewed the incident, Evan began, and the footage is uncomfortable, to say the least. Vanessa nodded. That's why I called this meeting. I assume this will go public. Devika asked. Vanessa didn't hesitate. Not yet, but we will address it openly, honestly. I want this company to stand for something beyond just fast flights and free drinks. Marisol spoke next. What do you have in mind? We're starting an internal audit, Vanessa said. Gate staff, customer complaints, hiring patterns. I want to know if this is one bad apple, or if there's rot in the tree. Silence, and we're launching a program. She continued. Call it flight path to respect. Real training, real consequences. Stories from real passengers who've been profiled, ignored, dismissed. Let the staff hear what it's like. Let them feel it. Evan exhaled slowly. You're serious? Vanessa smiled faintly. This isn't the first time I've been profiled while boarding one of my own planes. It was just the first time someone tore up the ticket in my face. The board members exchanged glances. There were no objections. You have our full support, Devika said. Let's make it happen. A ripple in the sky by the end of the week. The story hadn't hit the news, but whispers had already begun inside. Aurelia Air staff talked about the incident at JFK in hushed tones. Some were shocked, others weren't. Employees began sharing their own stories in anonymous emails to HR. Complaints that had once been ignored were being revisited. The atmosphere shifted. The next week, Vanessa sat in on a new employee orientation in Los Angeles. This time, she wasn't there as a CEO, she was just listening. The trainer clicked to a slide titled, Seeing Beyond Assumptions, Passenger Dignity and Equity at Every Gate, and there, in bold letters, was the quote Vanessa had spoken in that glass-walled lounge. You only treat people with respect when you know who they are. Let's change that. Vanessa felt a tightness in her throat, but it wasn't anger anymore. It was something close to hope. A passenger's message a week later. Vanessa received a handwritten letter at headquarters. No return address, it read, Dear Ms. King, I was at gate A22 the day that staff member tore up your ticket. I was the man in the grey blazer, sitting near the window. I should have spoken up. I didn't. I froze. I've thought about it every day since. You didn't owe anyone grace, but you showed it anyway. I want you to know your strength didn't just change your moment, it changed mine to dot. Thank you for not staying quiet. The rest of us shouldn't either. Vanessa folded the note and slid it into her desk drawer. She didn't need applause. She never had, but she understood something now. It was never just about the ticket. It was about reclaiming every stolen moment for herself, and for everyone who had ever been told, you don't belong. A quiet Sunday morning broke over. New York City, golden sunlight slipping through apartment blinds and bouncing off car roofs. But inside the newsroom of Jet Current Weekly, a viral aviation blog turned credible news outlet, things were not so calm. 23-year-old intern Leela Sanders sipped lukewarm coffee as her eyes scanned a tip that had just landed in there. Anonymous inbox. Gate agent rips up black woman's first-class ticket. Turns out she owns the airline JFK Airport. Aurelia Air. Look into it. Leila blinked, reread the sentence, then sat upright in her chair. She quickly typed back a follow-up, but the sender had used a disposable email. No response. Still, something about it felt real. She began digging. She cross-referenced JFK departures, found Aurelia's gate assignments from the previous Friday, and cross-checked their manifest logs. Then she found it. Flight 176 to San Francisco, gate A22. Her pulse quickened. Digging deeper into social media, she searched Aurelia Air Gate A22 and sorted by the past 72 hours. There it was. A shaky cell phone video posted on TikTok with a caption, "Can't believe this happened in 2025. Gate agent ripped this black lady's ticket like she was trash." The video had over 97,000 views, and counting. In it, Vanessa's face could only be seen in profile.com and composed, but the woman's voice, steady, clear, and powerful, was unmistakable. You didn't even ask for ID. You didn't check the system. You just assumed. Then a man in uniform arrived, his voice audible. "She owns 51% of this airline." Leela's jaw dropped. She hit pause and turned to her editor's office. Patrick," she said, standing with her laptop. "I think we need to run something big, like today." Vanessa's office, San Francisco. Vanessa stood at the floor to see windows of Aurelia Air's West Coast office, watching planes lift into the sky like birds chasing freedom. Her assistant, Tasha, entered cautiously. "You might want to see this," she said, handing over a tablet. On the screen, the article from Jet Current Weekly, "Gate Agent Rips Up Ticket. Turns Out Passenger Owns the Airline," by Leela Sanders, June 15, 2025. The story was simple, but powerful. It told what happened at Gate A22, referenced the leaked video, and described Vanessa's handling of the incident with dignity, control, and a message for every ignored or mistreated customer. There were thousands of shares, celebrities reposting, comments calling her a queen, a boss, a blueprint, but Vanessa's face didn't light up with pride. She just nodded once, slowly, and handed the tablet back. I didn't want this to be about me. Tasha looked uncertain. But it is. No, Vanessa replied. It's about a system that needs to break before it breaks people. There was a buzz on her desk phone. Line 3, Tasha said. Jet Current wants a statement. Vanessa nodded. Patch it through. The call Leela couldn't believe. She was about to speak with Vanessa King herself. Her hands shook slightly as she answered the call. This is Leela Sanders from Jet Current. Vanessa King, came the smooth, unhurried voice on the line. I hear you've been busy. Leila nearly stammered. Ms. King, I hope the article was accurate. I tried to stay respectful. You did fine, Vanessa said. But I want to add something. Not for damage control. For context, Leila straightened. Absolutely. There are thousands of gate agents across this country who do their jobs with excellence. Melinda is not the headline. The culture that allows a Melinda to go unchecked. That's the story. That's what we're changing. Leila was silent. Then, can I quote you on that? Vanessa smiled on the other end. I said it for a reason. The reaction within days. The story made national headlines. Not because Vanessa sought the spotlight, she avoided interviews, declined TV appearances, but because the truth had legs of its own. Civil rights leaders praised her. Airline forums exploded. Pilots and flight attendants shared stories of quiet discrimination, of passengers being downgraded or delayed for vague reasons. Then came a tweet from someone. Unexpected : at arcing official. That's my big sister. She's been fighting for people behind the scenes for 20 years. Now the world sees what I've always known. Vanessa aqui. Gateia, 22. The wide corridors of JFK Airport buzzed with motion, rolling luggage, tired feet, hurried voices, and the low, rhythmic hum of announcements echoing through every corner. Gate A22 was no exception. Business travelers clutched briefcases, vacationers scrolled through their phones, and exhausted parents chased after wandering toddlers. In the center of it all stood Vanessa King, calm and composed, clutching a sleek leather handbag and a pristine printed first-class ticket. She wasn't loud. She didn't need to be. She stood in a quiet strength that made some people curious and others uncomfortable. Vanessa was in her late 40s, with tightly coiled hair cropped into a stylish bob, skin the color of roasted chestnuts, and eyes that missed nothing. She wore a tailored navy blue blazer, high-waisted pants, and classic black flats. There was no Gucci, no labels shouting for attention, but everything she wore spoke one thing: elegance. She had arrived early, cleared security, and now waited patiently, as she had many times before. She was flying from New York to San Francisco, a flight she had taken more times than she could count. This time, she was traveling for business, important business. As the digital screen above the gate blinked, now boarding first-class passengers, Vanessa stepped forward. A tall woman, in a tight bun and grey uniform, stood at the counter. Her name tag read Melinda. She looked up briefly, then back down. She didn't smile. Vanessa approached with a polite nod and held out her ticket. Good morning. Melinda gave it a cursory glance, and then frowned. I'm sorry, ma'am, she said, her voice sharp, mechanical. First-class passengers only. You'll need to step back. Vanessa blinked. I am first class. Seat 2. Melinda looked again. This time, a scowl flickered over her face. This can't be right, she muttered. Where did you get this ticket? Vanessa straightened slightly. From your airline, purchased in full. Melinda narrowed her eyes and snatched the ticket from Vanessa's hand. There's no way this is real, she mumbled under her breath. And then, with a snap, she tore the ticket in half, right down the middle. A gasp escaped from someone in the line behind Vanessa. A middle-aged white man in a suit froze mid-step. A young Latina mother clutched her toddler's hand a little tighter. Eyes turned toward them, then quickly turned away. No one said anything. Vanessa's breath caught in her throat, not out of fear, but from the stunning audacity of what had just happened. Excuse me, she said, her voice still composed, but laced with steel. Melinda gave a dismissive shrug. I don't know how you managed to get this, but you're not flying first class. There's no record under your name. Please step aside and let actual first-class passengers through. You didn't even check your system, Vanessa said calmly. Melinda's lips curled into something resembling a smirk. Look, ma'am, I don't have time for this. You people always try to get upgrades or sneak in with fakes. But this isn't happening today. Now move along. You people. The words hung in the air like a slap. Vanessa inhaled deeply. Around her, the silence was deafening. Everyone heard it, but no one stepped in. A security guard by the window glanced in their direction but said nothing. Vanessa looked down at her torn ticket. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. Her fingers moved swiftly over the screen. One ring, then another. Then someone answered. Marisol, Vanessa said, her voice low. I need you to listen carefully. I'm at JFK, gate A22. One of our staff just tore up my first-class ticket. She said I forged it. A pause. No, I'm not kidding. Another pause, this time filled with fire. Yes, she said, you people. Vanessa's tone hadn't changed, but her eyes had hardened. Send someone now. I'm not moving. She hung up, then looked up at Melinda. I suggest you pause boarding until your manager arrives. Melinda scoffed. Ma'am, you're not in charge here. Vanessa didn't reply. She didn't need to. 10 minutes passed. The tension at gate A22 grew thick. Passengers whispered. Some recorded on their phones. Others looked away, pretending not to notice. Melinda continued boarding, though her voice grew more clipped and her smile more forced. Then the walkie-talkies buzzed. 3 airline officials came hurrying down the terminal. Flanked by a tall man in a navy blazer with a gold badge on his chest, he stopped directly in front of Vanessa. Ms. King. Vanessa nodded. He immediately extended his hand. My deepest apologies, ma'am. We just received word. This is entirely unacceptable. Melinda looked up, confused. Sir, this woman was trying to stop. The man cut in, his voice cold. She was trying to, Melinda stammered. She owns 51% of this airline, the man said, turning slowly toward her. This is her airline. The silence that followed was volcanic. Melinda's face drained of color. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She looked round as if waiting for someone to jump in and explain that this was some sort of prank. Vanessa stepped forward, holding what remained of her torn ticket. I didn't want to make a scene, she said softly. But you made one for me. The crowd behind her was frozen. Even the security guard had stepped closer now, visibly uncomfortable. The senior official turned to the 2 men behind him. Escort Ms. King to the executive suite. Rebook her immediately. Then have HR on standby to address this. He didn't. Look at Melinda again. He didn't have to, but Vanessa did. She turned to her. You didn't ask for ID. You didn't check the system. You didn't even hesitate to judge me based on how I looked. I wonder how many others you've treated this way. Melinda tried to speak, but her voice cracked. I didn't know. That's the problem, Vanessa said. You only treat people with respect when you do know who they are. And with that, she walked away, escorted by staff, flanked by shocked onlookers, leaving behind a gate that had gone dead silent. Later that day, Vanessa sat in the quiet of the airline's private lounge, a fresh boarding pass in her hand, this time unchallenged. She sipped from a glass of sparkling water and stared out at the planes crawling slowly across the tarmac. Marisol, her VP of operations, stood across from her, looking shaken. She's suspended, effective immediately. We're reviewing her history, but, she hesitated. This might not be the first incident. Vanessa nodded. I want the footage, and the audio. You'll have it within the hour. There was a pause. Vanessa leaned back in her seat. I don't want this buried, she said. If we bury this, it keeps happening. This isn't just about me. It's about every single person she's humiliated who didn't have the power to call someone. Marisol nodded slowly. Do you want PR involved? Vanessa gave a small smile. Not yet. First, I want her to know exactly who she disrespected. Then we'll talk about public accountability. Back at gate A22, Melinda sat stiffly in a chair, eyes wide, as she stared at her phone. An internal memo had been forwarded to her. The subject line read, Urgent, incident involving co-founder. Vanessa King, immediate review required co-founder. She read the message 3 times. Her heart pounded. She hadn't just denied a customer. She had disrespected the woman who helped build the company she worked for. The irony. The training slides from orientation had her name on them. She'd just never noticed. never cared. And now, it was too late. The executive sky lounge was quiet, its floor two-ceiling windows spilling golden sunlight over polished floors and plush leather chairs. A jazz instrumental played softly overhead. Attendants in navy uniforms moved discreetly, offering refreshments and warm towels. Vanessa sat in a corner suite overlooking the tarmac. Her new first-class boarding pass was tucked neatly into her handbag. A sleek silver laptop sat open on the table in front of her, but she wasn't typing. She was thinking not just about what happened at Gate A22, but what it meant. She had spent over 20 years building Aurelia Air from scratch. Once just an ambitious idea she co-founded with two partners, now one of the fastest-growing boutique airlines in the country. While her co-founders handled tech and investment, Vanessa had focused on people hiring practices, training, passenger experience, and culture. She had handpicked their original team. She had written the policies, and yet here she was, reduced to a stereotype at the hands of someone wearing the same company badge. Her phone buzzed. Marisol. Melinda's complete employee file is in your inbox. Want me to come back up? Vanessa typed back. No need. Just give me 10 minutes. Then bring her in. Alone. Asterisk. She closed the message, opened her email, and clicked on the file. Personnel file. Melinda Carter. Hired. June 2018. Position. Gate Operations Supervisor. JFK. Complaints. 3 informal, 1 formal notes. Multiple behavior flags regarding attitude towards certain passengers. Vague comments, dismissive tone, and once accused of attempting to downgrade a paying customer without cause. No follow-up conducted. Vanessa stared at the screen, her jaw clenched. For complaints. No action taken. A company she helped build had protected someone like this, while punishing others silently. She closed the file and leaned back. Her thoughts were interrupted by a gentle knock. Marisol peeked in. She's here. Send her in, Vanessa said quietly. Melinda's reckoning Melinda walked into the lounge like someone headed for the principal's office. Her bun was tighter than before, her eyes uncertain. She wore the same uniform, but her badge was gone, replaced by a plain clip with just her name. Vanessa didn't stand. She simply gestured to the chair across from her. Sit. Melinda did, legs stiff. I'm not going to fire you today, Vanessa said. Yet Melinda looked up, startled.